My father loved my mother deeply, yet she died because of me. Later, my father adopted another daughter who greatly resembled my mother. On our 16th birthday, he treated the adopted girl like a little princess, while I was mistaken by guests as the daughter of a maid. That's when my phone rang. Sweetheart, happy birthday. I've missed you so much. Mommy misses you. It was as if my mother had returned. When Sarah's guest ordered me to wash her car, my father Simon just returned from outside. His assistant, carrying an expensive crystal castle, presented it to Sarah. Her classmates gasped in awe and envy. Then, I heard Simon's voice, filled with indulgence and affection, "A castle for the princess. Happy birthday, my only little princess, the only princess." I mulled over these words, feeling increasingly bitter. Today wasn't just Sarah's birthday, it was mine too, but, like every other year, I received nothing. In Simon's eyes, I was a sinner, unworthy of celebration because I caused my mother's death. 10 years ago today, my mother died in a car accident while trying to buy the strawberry cake I wanted, leaving us forever. Since then, Simon has despised me. At the funeral, he declared to everyone, "Sherry is no longer my daughter." I sat there on the ground, blinking back tears, puzzled and helpless. I was too young then to understand Simon's heartlessness. Only as I grew older did I realize the finality of his words. Later, his company went public and his wealth soared. After becoming a wealthy boss, he adopted Sarah. From then on, he only showed affection to Sarah. Sarah lived in the master bedroom of a luxury home. I stayed in a servant's room. Sarah was driven to school. I had to take the bus. Sarah's wardrobe was filled with new clothes. I had to wear her hand-me-downs. Sarah was like a princess. I was just a live-in servant. Yes, I was an orphan servant, but I also wanted to be a princess. I remember when I was young, Simon promised me that, back then, my mother was still with us. Simon's company was just starting, and our family of 3 was crammed into a small 2-bedroom apartment. To support him, my mother secretly transferred the money from the red envelopes my grandfather gave me into his account. "Simon and Sherry don't have many expenses, don't worry," my mother would always reassure him. I liked to parrot back, "Daddy, don't worry. Sherry's red envelopes are all for Daddy." Before I could finish, Simon couldn't hold back any longer, bending down to press his face tightly between ours. Soon, a hot liquid dripped onto my cheek, tickling me. Looking back, those must have been Simon's tears. I remember before I turned 10, he always told me, "When Daddy is successful and makes a lot of money, I want Sherry to be a princess." Okay, see, he had promised, but he broke his promise. Thinking of this, I heard again the harshly polite voice, "Maid sister, why haven't you gone to wash my car yet? Do you think I'm just Sarah's classmate, so you don't take me seriously?" Sarah attends an international school. Her classmates are all children of the wealthy, naturally looking down on others, but I am not a maid. I glared at her, ready to speak. Then, in the next moment, Simon asked indifferently, "Why not go? Why not go?" Hearing this, it felt like a hammer struck my chest. How could I forget that in Simon's eyes, I am just a maid? Right away, Simon had said before that if he was unhappy, he would cut off my tuition and living expenses, but I had promised my mom that I would get into the best university. I couldn't break my promise to her, so, as long as Simon continued to support me, I could endure anything. I pursed my lips lightly and turned around. The next moment, a gentle voice came from behind, "Dad, why don't we let Sherry blow out the candles too? Today is her birthday too." She was really looking forward to it. She even secretly tried on my evening gown yesterday. I frowned. I turned around to say I hadn't, but then sneers came my way. Damn, a maid daring to wear her master's dress. "Sarah, have you disinfected this gown?" Unbelievable. Turns out she's a thief. Hearing those words, I almost ran over and shoved Sarah's face into the cake. I admit, last night, when she was flaunting her new dress, I was indeed envious, but it was just envy. I never stole. I'm not a thief. My eyes reddened with anger, but I dared not move, because Simon seemed to sense what I wanted to do and stepped in front of Sarah, looking at me with a dark face, contempt, hatred, indifference. "How could she have a daughter like you? Apologize, otherwise, you can drop out of school tomorrow." Another threat. "How could she have a husband like you?" As soon as the words left my mouth, Simon's face darkened. I had never seen him so terrifying before. with a slap that echoed through the living room. Simon hit me for the first time after ignoring me for so many years. Soon after, my right cheek swelled up. I felt both angry and pained. But what could I do? I was only 16. I only had a father in name. This father ignored me, hated me, threatened me, hit me. Clearly, he didn't love me at all. Meanwhile, Sarah, seemingly confused and thinking she was doing a good deed, hurried over to smooth things over. Dad, it's normal for girls to like beautiful dresses. I didn't mean that. What did she mean? Then, forget it, I've already been hit. Nothing else really matters now. So, slap, slap, slap. I gave Sarah 3 slaps in a row. That's the price for your false accusations. After I hit her, Sarah looked like a wilting lotus. Sherry, seeing Sarah's distressed face, Simon looked deeply pained. He personally helped Sarah up, softly comforting her. Does it hurt? I'll call a doctor right away. Sarah covered her face, tears streaming down. It's okay, Dad, don't blame Sherry. Please, don't hit Sherry anymore. After she spoke, her classmates snapped out of their shock, scolding her for being too kind. They urged Simon to fire me. Fire me. I found it ironic, and also sad. Looking up, when I caught Simon's eyes for the first time, I clearly saw the indifference in them. His voice was cold, devoid of any emotion. Sherry, I'm sending you to an orphanage. From today, you are not to set foot here again. An orphanage? I'm actually satisfied. I was an orphan anyway, and I could continue my education at the orphanage. It's much better than staying by Simon's side. Not long after, Simon's assistant asked me to leave. I turned around and walked away with flair, without a second glance. However, I hadn't taken many steps when my phone in my pocket suddenly rang. I didn't want to bother with it, but the vibration kept knocking at the door of my heart. Eventually, I couldn't resist and pulled out my phone. I glanced at the caller ID. Instantly, I was stunned. I couldn't believe it. I blinked hard. Mom, it's Mom. I couldn't help but stop in my tracks. The assistant beside me urged, hurry up, mister. Simon doesn't want to see you. I ignored him, trembling as I answered the call, though I knew it was impossible. Mom had been dead for 10 years. This number hadn't rung since. Could this be a prank? But even so, Mom was dead. I answered, but dared not speak, mouth agape, unsure what to do. But the voice spoke first from the other end. It was a familiar voice. Sweetie, happy birthday. It's been so long. Mom misses you so much. Her voice, amplified by the phone speaker, filled Simon's living room. Mom's voice was just as I remembered, unchanged, like a warm cup of plain water, warm and gentle. Mom, I burst into tears. Is it really you, Mom? So, is this call from heaven? My fingers trembled as I clutched the phone tightly. At this moment, it was my most precious possession, but the next second, it was snatched from my palm by Simon. Give it back. Instantly, I was seething with rage. Am I no longer allowed to speak with my own mother? This call was from her, not for him. I tried to snatch the phone away, but Simon was too tall. He glanced at me briefly and signaled the servant to pull me away. Our eyes met, and I saw his eyes were red, yet when he spoke, he was still calm. Who are you, and why are you pretending to be my wife? He must be deaf. Can't he recognize my mother's voice? Both instinct and hearing tell me that it's her. Sure enough, soon after, the phone transmitted. It's Mia, your wife. Simon, didn't you say you'd recognize me even if I turned into a breeze? What's going on now? Can't you recognize my voice anymore? Have you forgotten me? Fine, just give me back our daughter, and let's get a divorce. It had been a long time since anyone spoke to Simon like that. Simon's assistants all tiptoed around him, fearing his temper. Unexpectedly, Simon's expression softened. He almost choked up when he spoke. Mia, it really is you. Where are you? I'll come to see you right now. He seemed overjoyed, like a boy in his middle years. And, don't talk about divorce. I could never divorce you, Mia responded dryly. Remember to bring our daughter. Sherry must be even more beautiful now. Hearing that I could see Mom, I was so happy I almost forgot myself. I wanted to rush out immediately, but as I turned around, a force from behind held me back. Turning back, it was actually Simon. He stared at my face for a while. Let's go together. I froze, my hand touching my swollen right cheek. My mom had just said I must be more beautiful now. She was going to be disappointed. I wasn't beautiful at all right now. Simon seemed to realize this too. He instructed the servant to take me to bathe and change clothes. I refused. No need. Although I'm not beautiful now, I don't want to deceive my mother, especially not alongside Simon. I want my mom to know, these years, I've had it rough. I also want her to know, Simon had slapped me. Simon was silent for a few seconds and didn't force me anymore, before leaving the house. He turned back to look at Sarah's guests. Frowning, he ordered the servants to send the guests away. Suddenly, Sarah's face dropped. She came over pouting, batting her eyelashes at Simon. Daddy, are you going out? Mom will be here soon. She said your stomach has been upset, so she made you a stomach-soothing dinner. Hearing this, I almost rolled my eyes. A stomach-soothing dinner. They are enough to soothe anyone's stomach. Sarah's mom had been in a coma due to a car accident. Which is why Simon took Sarah in. Years later, her mother woke up. Instead of taking her daughter back, she often used visiting her daughter as an excuse to see Simon. Simon just grunted, still picking up the car keys handed over by his assistant, and looked at me. Let's go, eager to see Mom. I had no choice but to follow Simon. For all these years, this was actually my first time riding in Simon's car. Funnily enough, I didn't even know how to open the door of such a fancy car. Seeing me standing motionless, Simon came over without a word and opened the door for me. I didn't say, thank you. Once inside, I pulled out 100 from my pocket and handed it to Simon. For the ride, it was a scholarship from school that I had been reluctant to spend. No need, he said briefly, glancing at the money and then skillfully reversing and accelerating the car. I knew he was also eager to see Mom, but I still wanted to make things clear and insisted on paying him. You are not my dad anymore. I won't ride for free. Simon paused. Amidst the speeding, I could hear every word he said distinctly. As long as you are your mother's child, I will always be your dad. To have such a dad, I couldn't be bothered to argue. 20 minutes later, the car stopped. Looking out the window, I saw the blue sky, the crowd, the trains. This was our old home next to the train station, not far away. A woman in a plaid dress was waving at me. It was Mom, Mom. I jumped out of the car and ran into her arms. Simon also got out of the car, standing beside it. He saw Sherry rush into his wife's embrace. Everything seemed so unreal. He pinched his palm hard. Was this real? Was it not a dream? He was terrified that he would wake up and Mia would be gone again. Mia. His voice trembled as he called out her name. Her face looked just as young and beautiful as before. Like the lilies that bloomed in his room every day, she really was back. Simon looked at his bleeding palm and felt his heart finally settle. He couldn't help but feel hopeful. Mia was back. His happiness had returned. He was no longer a walking corpse. He would come home to see Mia, whom he missed day and night. If things were tough outside, he would come home and hold her. Any achievement he got, he would rush home to share with her. They would love each other and raise their daughter. Living days even the gods would envy. But then, his heart suddenly ached. Looking up and seeing his wife and daughter tightly embraced, he thought of the recent past when he was about to send Sherry to an orphanage. Over the years, he had neglected Sherry. Would Mia blame him? After throwing myself into my mom's arms, it finally hit me. Everything was real. My mom, who had passed away, was back. She must have returned seeing how miserable I was. Mom, I missed you so much. Sob. I couldn't finish my sentence before I burst into tears, crying uncontrollably. Unable to stop myself. There, my child, cry as much as you need, lean on me, Mom said, not trying to stop my tears, but gently patting my shoulder, waiting for me to calm down before she took a good look at me. My dear, how did you get so thin? You were chubby when you were little because I fed you well. Where has all that gone? And, why is your face swollen? Who hit you? Mia held her daughter, feeling like she was holding nothing but bones. Well, that was manageable. She could gain back the weight. Probably it was just her daughter being a teenager, too concerned with looks to eat properly. Mia wanted to blame Simon a bit, but knowing how busy he was, especially as a single dad, she couldn't really hold it against him. But then she noticed her daughter's swollen face and the word bullying popped into her mind. Was someone picking on her daughter because she was motherless? Did Simon know about this? At that moment, she looked up to find Simon. Without realizing when he had arrived, he was already standing beside them, shielding them from the harsh afternoon sun. Simon, who hit our Sherry, and to think it was a slap. Mom's voice trembled with anger, accompanied by faint sobs. I've never laid a finger on Sherry her whole life. Who did this? I'm going to make them pay. Simon's lips were pursed. Unable to meet Mom's eyes, the air seemed to stiffen around them. After what felt like an eternity, he finally said, "It was me." Mom was stunned for a few seconds, then, without giving Simon any chance to explain, she slapped him across the face. The sound was loud enough to draw the attention of passers-by. Simon didn't dodge it, taking the slap squarely. He then asked, "Are you angry? Do you want to hit me more?" His tone was almost like that of a soap opera actor, which I found repulsive. Mom was still young, looking just as she did at 25. How old was he now? In such a public setting, I didn't want Mom to make a scene with him. I tugged at her sleeve to catch her attention, but she just stared at the worn cuffs of my shirt. "How long have you been wearing this shirt?" I pursed my lips. It wasn't really that old, just 2 years, but I had been growing, and it wasn't like I had many clothes, just that I wore the ones I had frequently. I thought that wasn't what Mom should be focusing on. She should notice how old Simon looked now. She had been given a second chance at life. She shouldn't waste it with an old man. I was thinking about Uncle Alex when Mom suddenly grabbed Simon by his tie and demanded, "I read in a magazine that you're quite wealthy now. Where has all your money gone? Why is our daughter dressed like this? Didn't you promise that once you had money, our daughter would live like a princess?" Mom was hysterical. But she didn't look bad at all. Standing behind her, I thought she looked incredibly beautiful. This was a scene I had often imagined. Every Chinese New Year's Eve, Simon would only give Sarah a red envelope and have the reunion dinner with her. After dinner, he would accompany Sarah to watch the fireworks. Confused uncles would ask Simon why he treated an adopted daughter so well. Simon would seriously reply, "Because she resembles my wife. Do you know, my wife was a princess since she was young. Only when she married me did she experience hardships." He wished for Sarah, who resembled her mother, to have a good life, yet he ignored the daughter of that very mother. Every New Year's Eve, I would secretly fall asleep holding my mother's photo. Then, in my dreams, I would see my mother standing up for me. And today, finally, my dreams came true. However, I didn't care about Simon's reaction, because he no longer mattered to me. He had already sent me to the orphanage. And the one who took me out was my mother. Just as my mother was questioning the silence, a Rolls-Royce suddenly stopped. The car door opened from the inside. Sarah jumped out and ran over. Her mother was right behind her. "Who are you? Stay away from my dad." "Dad? What happened to your face?" "Mom, call the police. This woman hit Dad." Mom and Dad. It seemed like they were the real family. My mom stared at the suddenly appearing mother and daughter for a long time. "Dad, Mom," she murmured, releasing her grip. "Simon, did you remarry?" Simon was blank for a second, then looking at Sarah's mother, a look of disgust appeared in his eyes. "I didn't. She's just my adopted daughter. I have no relations with her mother." Simon was quick to defend himself when he saw he was misunderstood, losing his composure. Seeing this, I sneered, "Yes, there is no relationship. Just the relationship of having dinner together on New Year's Eve and attending parent-teacher meetings." I said these words calmly, but inside, I was tumultuous. Over the years, New Year's Eve dinners, I ate alone. Parent-teacher meetings, I would tell teachers my dad was very busy, and they usually pressed hard. "What is he busy with that he neglects even his daughter?" I couldn't answer. The teachers would contact Simon directly, but the person who ended up attending was our housekeeper, Monica. Monica's Mandarin was not standard, and she would be mocked by my classmates every time she came. I felt so sorry for housekeeper Monica. She had her own daughter, and if her daughter knew she was being laughed at in the city, how sad she would be. I didn't have a mother, so I couldn't burden someone else's mother. Later, I would rather lie to the teacher than let Monica come. Thus, at every parent-teacher meeting, my family was always absent, but Sarah was different. Simon would personally attend her parent-teacher meetings and even donate items to her school. After Sarah's mother was discharged from the hospital, whenever Sarah expressed a small wish, Simon would appear at her school with her mother. Her prestigious school was just across the street from mine. Simon's luxury car parked at the school gate always attracted stares from the opposite side. My classmates would envy Sarah. "You're so good at being reborn, Sherry. You share a surname with Sarah. But your mom is just a foolish woman who can't even speak standard Mandarin." This sentence gathered all my anger. I couldn't quite tell if I was more upset that he insulted our nanny, Monica, or that he cursed at my own mother. Regardless, I ended up punching that foul-mouthed boy. He took quite a beating. The incident caught Simon's attention. He knew it wasn't my fault, but he still made me switch schools. He even had the audacity to say, "You and your mother always bring me trouble. You're nothing like her." Thinking about it, I looked at Simon's torn collar and laughed. Aren't my mom and I quite alike? With that thought, I took my mom's hand, only then realizing how cold her hands were. She must be upset too. She had just told me that she arrived here a decade ago. As if it were just a blink of an eye, she surely couldn't accept that her husband was spending the New Year's Eve dinner with another woman and attending parent-teacher conferences with her. "It's okay, Mom, you still have me." I squeezed her hand and whispered, "Mom, shall we go see Uncle Alex? He'd be so happy to know you're back." After saying this, I glanced at Simon, not out of defiance, but Simon's face turned dark. He had resented me for so many years, yet he had never been as angry as he was today. Oh right, he used to just ignore me. It feels good to see him this mad, but he's overthinking it. Why would I use my mom to upset him? Uncle Alex is just a friend of hers. Simon is the one who's narrow-minded. Holding a grudge about my grandfather wanting to match my mom with Uncle Alex. After my mom left, Simon ignored me, and my grades plummeted. Uncle Alex couldn't stand by and did tutoring for me at a cafe every week. When Simon found out, he handed me over to a particularly rigid tutor and forbade me from going out on weekends or seeing Uncle Alex again. Since then, I haven't seen Uncle Alex, who I heard is now an associate professor at the university I want to attend. Once, I secretly called him, and he was so delighted that he sent me lots of study materials. "Mom, Uncle Alex has helped me, and I want to thank him." That was my real intention. Of course, my mom wouldn't refuse me. She pulled herself out of her own emotions and agreed. But the next second, Simon said sternly, "I forbid you to go. What right do you have? You're remarried." Mia was furious inside, mainly disgusted with Simon. "I am not remarried." Simon massaged his temples and shot a look at his assistant. The assistant quickly caught on and hurriedly ushered Sarah and her mother into the car. Sarah wanted to say something but was stopped by her mom. The mother and daughter tactfully left quietly. The luxurious Rolls-Royce soon disappeared from sight. Mia's eyes brimmed with sarcasm. The Rolls-Royce. The elegantly dressed mother and daughter. Simon's so-called foster daughter, whose attire alone could buy everything her own daughter wore. What was her daughter wearing? What was she eating? She had lost so much weight and even had marks on her face from being hit. How much hardship did her daughter endure when she was not around? She couldn't understand why Simon would act this way. Sherry was their only daughter. Why didn't he love their daughter? Mia felt her heart breaking. At that moment, Simon looked down and said to her, "Mia, the child is just talking nonsense. It's a misunderstanding. I haven't remarried, nor am I interested in anyone else. All these years, you've been the only one in my heart." Simon was as humble as the most obedient dog. When the company went public, he became a significant figure in the capital, eventually dominating the industry. Over the years, he never really paid attention to anyone else. But in front of Mia, he would always bow his head and bend over. I really wanted to expose Simon. But then I thought, what's there to expose? His love for Mom is real. He truly loves her. Although he has kept his distance from me over the years, I know he's been seeing a psychologist every month. The housekeeper said he uses sleeping pills like daily bread. True or not, every time he misses Mom uncontrollably, he takes it out on me, like canceling my bus fare, forcing me to wake up before dawn and walk to school. Once, a new chef trying to please me baked a strawberry cake. When he found out, he fired the chef. Then he kicked the table over, destroying my strawberry cake. "Do you still have the face to eat this? How did your mother die? If I see this kind of cake again, you get out, get out." These 3 words, Simon has said to me many times. I'm always scared that Simon really doesn't want me anymore. Later, Sarah came, and his condition improved a lot, but for me, nothing got better. So, the more Simon loves Mom, the more he cares for Sarah. The more he despises me. I can hate Simon, but Mom, if she still feels moved by Simon, I have no objections. After all, Simon really loves her. So, I shut my mouth and stopped talking. If Mom continues to stay with Simon, I have no objections. It's enough if I just don't talk to Simon from now on. I quietly thought about it, finding comfort and satisfaction. At least Mom came back. At least she stood up for me. At least. Thinking, I heard Mom's firm voice, Simon. I won't allow anyone to bully my daughter, so, we're done. Mom walked away from Simon. When he tried to follow her, she shouted, Uncle, I've told you, I don't want you to take care of me. Can't you understand human speech? For a moment, passers-by threw disdainful glances at them. Even though Simon was naturally handsome and well-maintained, the torment of his longing had brought out streaks of white in his hair. But Mom still looked 25, thus. People inevitably accused Simon of cradle snatching. Some concerned bystanders even stopped Simon, and some even wanted to call the police. Finally, Simon, restrained by well-intentioned people, looked at us, mother and daughter, with a gloomy face as we walked away. For him, however, escaping was like leaving the monk behind, but not the temple. After all, the only place my mother and I could go was the home we once had. It was the place I had always longed for, a true home. Not a cold mansion, sweetie. I'll cook for you first, then we can go thank Uncle Alex. All right, I'll make braised pork, your favorite, oh, and squirrel fish, garlic shrimp, beef short ribs. Oh, I don't have money. Mom panicked. I was stunned too, but the next second, the door opened. Simon, carrying several bags, looked at my mom tenderly. You rest, I'll take care of it. The moment he entered with the sunlight, I was dazed too. It felt like returning to 10 years ago when our family of 3 still lived here, but in the next second, his $1,000,000 watch caught my eye, and the light in my eyes dimmed. It turned out we hadn't gone back. Simon entered on his own accord, ignored by everyone. In the kitchen, he busied himself. Mom busied herself. After a long time, Mom couldn't hold back anymore and whispered in a low voice, Simon, I really hate you now. Simon paused in his chopping, a shadow crossing his eyes. I know, he had always known that Mia would hate him, but what could he do? He missed Mia to the point of madness. I admit, I really didn't want to be good to her. Because of her, you died, and I hated her. Simon's frank words were as plain as boiled water, never surprising me. He hated me. That was a fact I couldn't accept in the past, but now I had. I tugged at my lips, turned around aimlessly, thinking of doing something else, but then his voice came from behind me again. But after all, she is our daughter. I've already decided, once she comes of age, I will meet you and leave all the inheritance to her. Hearing this, I stopped in my tracks, turned around to look at his tall, familiar silhouette, my eyes as if veiled. He had already abandoned me, yet he wanted to leave me an inheritance. How generous, such a good father. After his death, I would still miss him, because he left me money. That's money. As Simon's biological daughter, what I lacked the most was money, right? With money, I could buy new clothes, I could take a ride to school. How wonderful. This was all I ever longed for, and the easiest thing for Simon to give. I forcefully wiped away my tears, sneered at his silhouette. So when will you die? Does it have to be after I come of age? Can't you die tomorrow? My words might have been too venomous. Even Mom was utterly shocked when she turned around. Sherry. Mom opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but remained silent. Simon was so angry that his eyes turned red, but eventually, he took a deep breath, placed his hand on Mom's shoulder, and gently reassured her, it's okay, she's just upset, so, he thinks he's right, and I'm just being emotional. I turned my face away, not wanting to see him anymore. As long as Mom likes him, that's all that matters. I don't care, I only have my mom, no dad. From now on, I'll treat him as if he's invisible. Thinking this, a cold voice came from behind. Simon, please leave. Mom took off her apron and put it aside, looking seriously at Simon. I don't know what my daughter has gone through to say such things, but right now, we both don't want to see you. Simon left. Mom held me in her arms for a long time without speaking. My mom was truly upset. After all, she and Simon were so in love. Mom still likes Simon, doesn't she? If I had never existed, Mom would have been really happy. Mom, every year on your birthday, Simon locks himself in his room all day. The doctor says he has suicidal tendencies. Mom, I used to be scared that if Simon suddenly died, I'd be all alone. I sobbed. Back then, I never imagined Simon truly wanted to die. Remembering my past fears, I cried hard. Mom cupped my face, kissed my salty tears, and said with a smile, "Baby, you're never alone, whether in life or death. I'm always with you, you are a part of me. My death was an accident, not because of you. Simon is a madman, just ignore him." That night, Mom kept repeating that word, madman. Yes, Simon is a madman. The next day, Mom took me to see Uncle Alex. "Alex, don't you recognize me? I'm Mia." Those two sentences made Uncle Alex wash his face again. Turning around, a soaking wet Uncle Alex burst into tears. "Mia, is it really you? In broad daylight, your ghost has come back." Before he could finish, I punched him. "You're the ghost. I've traveled through time." Mom rambled on, but in any case, she felt lucky to be able to come back and be with us. Of course, the immediate priority now is to transfer me to a new school. Mom thinks the school I'm currently attending is too poor. She wants to transfer me to the prestigious school she attended. But Sarah is also there, scared of her, not scared. I puffed out my chest and shook my head. "Because my mom is here, I'm not afraid of anyone." Uncle Alex strongly agreed. I asked my mom, "Is there anything I can help with?" Mom nodded. "Yes, by lending money. My mom's family used to be very wealthy, but my grandfather passed away 2 years ago. My uncle's family also moved abroad. She had no choice but to ask Uncle Alex for financial help." Uncle Alex was very generous and directly gave my mom a card. Mom naturally accepted it, looking around. I felt quite superfluous. Eventually, they took me to see some schools. Afterwards, we ate lunch near the school. Coincidentally, Simon and Sarah were also at that restaurant. Sarah was crying pitifully. "Dad, I don't want to go abroad. Why do I have to?" she pleaded. Simon, though reluctant, handed her a piece of paper. "Stop crying," he said. "Going abroad is great. I've arranged everything. You won't suffer at all." Listening to this, I truly thought he was a good father. He always wanted the best for Sarah. I couldn't help but feel the irony. The next moment, Simon saw us. "Mia, what are you doing here?" He quickly stood up, his dark pupils initially bright, but they dimmed the moment he saw Uncle Alex. Mom just lazily glanced at him. "Oh, I'm here with my daughter to check out schools. I don't have money to send her abroad, so we're just looking at local schools." I forgot to mention. I told Mom everything about Sarah. Mom thought Simon was seriously ill at that moment. Facing my mom's sarcasm, Simon looked especially uncomfortable, but he didn't erupt. "What are you talking about? Our daughter can definitely afford to study." Just after he said that, he pursed his lips consciously. He knew I was always worried about being expelled before. Thanks to him, "Mia, Sherry, have you eaten?" It was the first time Simon also looked at me. Meanwhile, he completely ignored Uncle Alex. Uncle Alex felt a bit uncomfortable, but fortunately, Mom ignored Simon. Then the waiter came over. "Lady, what would you like?" "No thanks. My husband and daughter don't like the taste here." After saying that, Mom glanced at Uncle Alex. "What are you waiting for? Let's go." "Honey," Uncle Alex blushed. She didn't care about his slight embarrassment and directly led us out. I couldn't resist giving Simon a quick look. His face was as stiff as if it had just been taken out of a fridge. That made me happy again. I thought we could go somewhere else for a peaceful lunch. But unexpectedly, Simon quickly followed us out. Of course, before he came out, he gave Sarah an ultimatum. "You don't have to go abroad, but you must leave my house. I'll give you some money." Upon hearing the words, termination of the adoption relationship, Sarah felt as though she had been struck by lightning. Before she could look up again, Simon had already gone out chasing after someone, with tears in her eyes. Sarah made a phone call. "Mom, Dad doesn't want me anymore." "You probably won't make it either. That woman who came out of nowhere is really going to take everything from us." Meanwhile, Simon was pestering my mom, Uncle Alex, and I both wanted to help my mom get rid of him, but with a wave of her hand, she told us to go find a place to eat. She stayed behind to talk with Simon. Of course, Simon wasn't in the mood for a peaceful conversation. As soon as he opened his mouth, he clenched his teeth and said, "Mia, you're still my wife. We've been separated for 10 years, but didn't you say you traveled through time? To you, it should feel like we were intimate just recently," Simon said, jealousy tightening his grip. "Mia, I love you. You can't just stop loving me. I'll make it up to Sherry. Trust me." Bringing it up only made things worse. "Make it up? How will you make it up?" try living a day as someone treated like an enemy by their own father. Don't say it's all because of me. Why love me? I wish you didn't love me. Simon, your kind of love is unbearable. My mom resented Simon, and there was nothing he could do about it. Uncle Alex and I waited in the restaurant for a long time, observing Uncle Alex. I thought he seemed quite happy. Uncle Alex, what are you so happy about? Because my mom called you her husband. Ah, no. Then what? I frowned, not understanding these adults. Uncle Alex tapped my forehead. Kid, don't overthink it. Your mom and I are good friends. I used to be a nerd. Often mocked for not being liked by girls, your mom would stand up and say she liked me. Your mom was the school beauty. Being liked by the school beauty was a big deal. After that, no one laughed at me anymore, and I could study in peace. Uncle Alex reminisced about the past, his eyes soft with a tender smile. I was just remembering the times when your mom protected me. Look, now I can also help your mom. He looked so proud. Soon after, my mom came back. She looked triumphant as if she had won a battle. She told me that Simon would no longer bother us. However, I also noticed the tear stains at the corners of her eyes. She had clearly been crying. The following week, I transferred to a new school, the same class as Sarah. As soon as I walked in, I could see everyone giving me unfriendly looks. Teacher, why does she get to parachute into our class? Because her mom is a mistress, typical of a mistress, just a whisper in the pillow. And she managed to send Sarah abroad. I instantly understood that Sarah was spreading rumors. I could tolerate her bullying me, but insulting my mom as a mistress was something I couldn't bear for even a second. Despite it being during class time, despite the teacher's attempts to stop me, I impulsively lifted the trash bin and dumped it on Sarah's head. Sarah was crying profusely in the principal's office. While being comforted by the principal, Simon arrived. The principal inquired about my parents and why they hadn't come yet. Simon cleared his throat and said, I am also her parent. Oh, indeed, I couldn't help but laugh, which clearly irritated the principal. Mr. Simon, you say she is your daughter. But look, on her very first day of school, she's already hitting classmates. How terrible is that? Of course, Sarah is no better, leading the charge by calling someone else's mother a mistress. Mr. Simon, this is your family matter, and I'm not interested in it, but please don't bring it to school. It was clear the teacher was trying to be fair and had even looked into the source of the rumors, not like Simon, who believed Sarah anytime she wanted to frame me. I stood up respectfully and bowed deeply to the principal. You are mistaken, he is not my father, he is only Sarah's father. My dad has passed away. Also, my mom has nothing to do with him. It's all just rumors. Then, ignoring the principal's bewildered expression, I turned directly to Simon. Please discipline your daughter properly in the future. Don't use your wealth to bring trouble to our school students. Simon looked at me and slowly closed his eyes, saying nothing. I grabbed my backpack, pushed Sarah aside as she was in my way, and headed back to the classroom. Passing by Simon, I spoke in an indifferent tone. I won't tell my mom about this. Please take good care of your only little princess. After Sherry left, Simon turned to Sarah, his gaze growing colder. He never expected that his beloved foster daughter would behave like this behind his back. Listen, she is my wife, not some mistress. Simon's words were slow, hitting Sarah's ears like nails. Also, my lawyer will meet with you tomorrow, and at that time, our adoption will be dissolved. Sarah looked at Simon in disbelief, trembling. Without the status of Simon's foster daughter, what prestige would she have left? Nothing. It was all that woman's fault, all because of Sherry's mom. Wasn't she supposed to be dead? Why did she come back? She should just die. Perhaps feeling guilty about Sarah's rumor spreading, Simon stopped bothering me and my mom, even if he did show up. It was only to watch from a distance. However, there were exceptions. To nourish me, my mom, taking advantage of the weekend, bought a lot of groceries, which were too heavy for her. Just as she was about to lose it halfway through, the load suddenly lightened. Simon had taken them from her hands. No need to struggle, he said resignedly, all his actions driven by his care for Mia. Why couldn't Mia just go home with him? There were no outsiders at home now, and Mia didn't hold it against him. However, as he bent down, she inadvertently noticed the white hairs at his temples. She stared at them for a long time, feeling an indescribable emotion stirring within her. You've gotten old, she remarked. Simon paused mid-step. Yes, I have. But you are still young and beautiful. He gazed deeply into her eyes, as if each look might be his last. He knew the feeling of loss all too well and cherished the present moment with all his might. Mia, would you come home with me? Let's be together as a family of three, never to part. Mia smiled. But I don't like old men. How about you give me half of your wealth and I'll spend it on some young love? Simon clenched his jaw and said stiffly, I'll donate it all tomorrow. Mia rolled her eyes in disbelief. Really, you, who once dreamed of making a fortune? This touched a sore spot, and the air seemed to freeze. Simon looked down. I just want you and Sherry to have a good life. Mia's smile stiffened slightly. And what kind of life is Sherry living? Simon fell silent. I know, I'm not fit to be her father. You're right, you're not. Just then, a woman suddenly appeared before him. It was Sarah's mother. Mr. Shen, why have you abandoned Sarah? You are her father. You can't just shirk responsibility like that. Mia found this laughable. He's a terrible father. He can't even take responsibility for his own daughter, let alone yours. Faced with these blunt words, Simon remained silent. The woman felt a chill. She knew Simon as someone who always sought revenge. How could a woman without any power dare to offend him like this? It was unbelievable. She couldn't believe it. Although she always benefited from Sarah's presence, she had been with Simon long enough. How could she lose to this other woman? Is Mr. Simon so heartless to treat his own beloved daughter this way for a woman of unknown origin? Do you know Sarah has always been frail? She's used to living in the villa, and ever since moving out, she's been constantly coughing. I can't take care of her on my own. She was gambling that Simon wasn't completely heartless, especially since he had always doted on Sarah. She was sure he would soften. Meanwhile, Mia was puzzled. What did this have to do with her? Why drag her into it? She simply walked away. Simon, fed up with the woman before him, pushed her aside and chased after Mia. Are you really going to leave without your things? After I went through all the trouble of carrying them for you, can't you at least give me a smile? Isn't that a bit too harsh? His earnestness, his eagerness, was like that of a high school boy chasing a girl, who wouldn't be jealous. The woman stood behind them, trembling with anger. Ever since Sarah became Simon's foster daughter, she too had been under his care. She received treatment from the best medical team and recuperated in the finest wellness centers. Every month there are new clothes and new jewelry. Sarah always had him take them to the sanatorium. Sarah called him Dad and her mom. Everyone at the sanatorium thought they were a happy family of three. She thought so too, and still feels the same way now. Moreover, that woman took away her husband, the father of her daughter. Simon followed his mother all the way home, however. When they reached the doorstep, his mother refused to let him in. Sherry doesn't want to see you, and you, I don't want to either. With a snap, the door was locked. His mother, with a stern face, headed to the kitchen. I couldn't understand why she was so angry. Seeing Simon shouldn't have upset her this much, but I didn't ask. Later on, I regretted not having asked for more details. Soon it was Monday again. It was only after I got to school that I learned Sarah had transferred out. Seeing her empty seat and hearing the whispered speculations of my classmates raised so many questions. Sarah was your dad's foster daughter. Is that true? We were all deceived by Sarah. If you're the real daughter, where were you before? I kept silent, not responding to any of them. Oddly, not seeing Sarah didn't improve my mood. By the end of the school day, I was somewhat anxious because my mom said she and Uncle Alex would come to pick me up. She had helped Uncle Alex with something significant, and he wanted to treat us to dinner. But just as I stepped out of the classroom, I heard shouts, "Go back inside. Someone's stabbing people at the school gate. There's already someone injured." The injured person was Uncle Alex. But the original target had been my mom. Uncle Alex had saved her. My mom and I rushed him to the hospital, trying to keep our spirits up. "Don't cry. It's not lethal. I think the cut missed the vital parts. Probably just needs a blood transfusion." My mother told him to be quiet. "Who asked you to protect me? Do you really like me that much?" I was confused. "Wasn't it just pure friendship?" Uncle Alex smiled. "Yes, I really like you. You're my best friend. Today, you also helped me dodge the marriage pressure at home, with my social anxiety. I can only hope to live a quiet life, all thanks to you." My mom didn't respond, just holding his hand tightly. "Mia, you'll also live well, won't you?" "Yes, that's good. I still have friends. you need to live well too. Uncle Alex almost didn't make it. He had underestimated his injury. The stab wound had reached a critical area and nearly took his life. Fortunately, he survived. Soon, the murder case was resolved. The perpetrator was a mentally ill individual. But he wasn't the mastermind. It was Sarah's mother. She had orchestrated the attack on my mom, thinking a mentally ill person's testimony wouldn't hold up in court even if exposed. However, his condition fluctuated, and he had recorded their transaction. Eventually, she was convicted. Simon and Sarah were supposed to terminate their adoption, but Sarah was still underage. However, Simon, coldly determined, wanted to sever ties with Sarah. In the end, Sarah reached out to the media, even brazenly demanding Simon's entire fortune. Simon ignored her. After she came of age, he used various collected evidences to annul their father-daughter relationship and took back everything he had given her. From then on, Sarah became just an ordinary girl. The last time I saw her, she had gotten married. Her husband was a cunning small-time business owner who always tried to ingratiate themselves with Simon during festivals, but they were always turned away at the door. Gradually, they became a joke among our circles. In the following years, my mom and I did quite well. We also maintained our distance from Simon, especially after the incident had struck her so hard. Actually, Mom had been deeply affected long ago. Since her miraculous return from the brink of death, she had been feigning strength, but in reality, she was the one who was most heartbroken. In this world, her husband had aged, and her daughter had grown up, yet her daughter had suffered immensely because of her supposed death, and the person who caused her daughter's suffering was none other than the husband who loved her deeply. Moreover, the husband who was once hers alone had unwittingly kindled possessive desires in others. Because of this, her close friend nearly lost her life. Since then, she had steadfastly refused to see Simon. That year, Mom went abroad and even assumed a new identity there. After I graduated, I went to join her. Before I left, Simon came to the airport to see me off. He hesitated for a long time before asking, "Will you and your mom ever come back?" "Of course, we will," I answered breezily. "We had to come back. This place was our forever home. We couldn't abandon it just because of someone." Then I'll wait for you guys." Simon seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, his rigid expression easing somewhat, but on closer inspection, there were many more fine lines around his eyes. I heard he had been trying hard to take care of himself over the years, but it hadn't been very effective. I shook my head at him. "Don't. You can wait for Mom, but you don't have to wait for me." I knew that Simon had never wronged Mom. On the contrary, he loved her more than anyone else, forever gone from us. But this has nothing to do with me. Before I left, Simon gave me a box of strawberry cake. "Your favorite," he said, trying to hand it to me, but I didn't take it. "I don't like it anymore. The first time I wanted it, Mom died. The second time I wanted it, Dad harshly shamed me. I dared not eat it again." Simon's hand hovered in the air for a long time before he finally retracted it. "If you face any difficulties abroad, remember to tell Dad. It was Dad's fault before. Dad didn't truly stop loving you. If you're willing, you will always be Dad's little princess." Simon had really changed. He never used to say things like that, but it was too late. Dad, little princess. Such a foreign term. I couldn't help but laugh. "Simon, a child sent to the orphanage doesn't have a dad. Having Mom is enough for me. I don't need to be your princess to be happy." With that, I boarded the plane without looking back. That's all about the first story. Do you have any insights after watching the above story? Feel free to tell us in the comments sections below. There is another story. Let's see. 3 years after escaping a forced love, I was diagnosed with a terminal illness. Initially, in my desperation to get away from Frank, I tried everything. After slashing my wrists with a hidden shard of porcelain, he finally let me go. Overjoyed, I refused to stay in the hospital any longer than necessary. I grabbed the bag he packed for me and left without looking back. As I departed, Frank, standing behind me with clenched fists, warned, "Sam, if you leave and don't take care of yourself, I will bring you back. Just you wait." Today, 3 years later, I stepped out of the neurology clinic with my medical report in hand. Standing in the hallway on the 5th floor, through the murky glass windows, I spotted a familiar figure at the hospital's main entrance. Frank was leaning against a car, casually lifting his hand as someone lit a cigarette for him. Perhaps it was my imagination, but the moment he looked up, Our eyes seemed to meet. His cold gaze sent shivers down my spine, causing the report in my hand to scatter across the floor. Patients around me stepped aside, their footsteps inadvertently crumpling the stark white pages. I muttered apologies under my breath as I hurriedly gathered up the scattered pages, each one a verdict of death, amidst whispered comments like, "So young, to have such an illness, what a hard life." And, "No family with him, must be from out of town." I remained silent. I patted off the gray footprints from the report, pulled my sleeves over the scars on my arms, and hurried away. Too anxious to take the elevator, I forcefully opened the stairwell door, cautiously peering through the windows at each landing to check the hospital's main entrance. Frank was still there, waiting for someone unknown. My heart pounded wildly, praying he wasn't there for me and that it was just a coincidence. Reaching the ground floor, my legs gave way, nearly causing me to stumble, which startled an ascending nurse. She exclaimed, "Hey, be careful, the stairs were just cleaned this morning." I replied quietly, "Thanks, I have to go." The nurse stepped forward, concerned, "Did you sprain your ankle? Shall I check it?" Like a startled bird, I stepped back quickly, waving her off. "No need, I'm fine, I really have to go." Just as I was about to exit the stairwell, I caught a glimpse of several familiar bodyguards in black in the outpatient hall. My hand shook, and I accidentally slammed the door shut. The nurse frowned, asking, "Sir, what's wrong?" Trying to calm myself, I managed to steady my shaky voice. "I have an old injury in my hand, and the door is a bit heavy. Sorry." She didn't press further, half doubtful as she began to leave, but I stopped her. "Excuse me, if I want to go to the underground parking lot, where is the exit?" "Is it at the main entrance?" The nurse kindly explained. "There are two exits, but they are not at the main entrance. They seem to be on the sides. There are signs on the walls. Just follow them." I thanked her and hurried down to the parking lot, picking an exit at random. Panic-stricken, I broke into a frenzied run. Halfway through, a speed bump tripped me hard, and both my elbows slammed into the ground, gritting my teeth against the pain. I continued to run from the dark underground towards the light, not daring to look back for a moment. I was terrified of being captured again. This time, I had come to the hospital on my electric bike, but given the circumstances, I decisively chose to abandon retrieving it from the parking lot. Clenching my teeth, I flagged down a taxi on the roadside and asked the driver to take me home. As we passed the hospital's main entrance, I couldn't help but look back and saw Frank still standing there, his figure somewhat desolate. I let out a huge sigh of relief and pulled out my vibrating phone from my pocket. Seeing it was an unknown number, I promptly hung up. The fall had shattered my phone screen into a spider web, and after a delay, my elbows started to burn with pain, but I was shaking all over, completely lacking the strength to even roll up my sleeves to check the injuries. I just collapsed in the back seat, my forehead furrowed in distress. I am just an ordinary person. Both unlucky and lucky. Sam, that's my name. My mother, who spent her life teaching elementary school, said my name was the sound of the wings of a bird breaking through the sky. She hoped I could soar with the winds, a name laden with her blessings for me. But she, on the eve of my college entrance exams, passed away due to a brain tumor. As I dealt with the exams, I also arranged her funeral, staying up through many long nights. She didn't want the high cost of surgery to become my burden, so she endured with just medication. In the end, the person in this world who least wanted to burden me became my greatest burden. I didn't get into college, and because of this shadow, I never set foot in a school again. Every time I saw a book, I would remember my poor mother and myself, now all alone. But life had to go on, so I started hustling around. At the age of 20, I got a job as a waiter in a hotel. I had no chance at the front desk, only doing odd jobs like cleaning rooms for guests. That night, as usual, I knocked on doors from the 7th floor's luxury suite downwards asking if guests needed room service, when I suddenly smelled alcohol. I really dislike dealing with drunkards, as dealing with their vomit or complaints is a hassle I preferred to avoid. So, I initially skipped that room, attending to other guests first before standing at the door of room 7606 and knocking lightly. "Hello, do you need room service?" No response. I asked again, unaware that what awaited me was a pitch-black abyss. A series of irregular footsteps came from behind the door, and suddenly, it swung open. A large hand fiercely grabbed my forearm, pulling me into an embrace. Only a row of bedside lamps lit the room, casting a dim light. Above me, heavy breathing filled the air as I looked up in shock into a pair of bloodshot eyes. This was a well-dressed man, not bad-looking. I steadied my nerves and asked him, "Sir, do you need any help?" Ignoring my struggle. He scanned me quickly with the eyes of a predator. He stared at my face and said, "Yes." Fear began to set in before I even had a chance to speak. He pulled me abruptly to the edge of the bed and forcefully pushed me down onto the messy sheets. His overwhelming presence crushed me. My cries, screams, and struggles amounted to nothing under his coercion, only deepening my despair. He tried to soothe me with sweet nothings, saying, "Stop crying, just endure it." But that night, I received no mercy from him. All I could see was the flickering light above, like endless fish scales, signaling that I had fallen into a river from which I couldn't escape. When I woke up the next day, I was no longer in the hotel. I was dressed in a comfortable robe, and my wounds were carefully treated, yet none of it felt right. My body ached everywhere, some areas unbearably so. Sitting in a strange room, recalling the horrors of the previous night, tears fell onto the back of my hand. When you're that upset, tears just don't stop easily. I wanted to cry out, but my voice was hoarse, and opening my mouth only let in the cold air. But what I couldn't understand was, I'm a man, could it be that men can be harmed too? At that moment, the person from last night opened the door. He was neatly dressed, a stark contrast to the beast from the night before. He looked at me and said, "I'm Frank, and I was wrong about last night. I'll take responsibility." I backed up to the edge of the bed, opened my mouth, and said, "I don't need your responsibility. Either compensate me, or I'm calling the police." I was trembling as I spoke, half in anger and half in fear. He was someone I couldn't afford to provoke or offend. Frank ignored my demands and continued, "I'll give you 300,000 a month. Just stay here. I've taken care of your job at the hotel." He walked forward 2 steps, and an elderly man came from behind him. "This is Uncle James. He'll take care of your needs. You can go out sometimes. Someone will always be with you to ensure your safety." The elderly man, Uncle James, gave me a kind smile. I clutched the blanket, lowered my demands, and said, "I don't need much. Just pay for my medical expenses. Where are my things? I'll leave after I get them." No one answered me. Before Frank left, his gaze seemed to convey that I had no choice. I was effectively under house arrest. In this villa, besides me, there was only Uncle James and 2 maids. One day, I ran after Frank, not caring about my phone, documents, or even shoes. But Uncle James stopped me with a firm yet gentle hand. "Frank, you can't do this to me." I didn't dare confront the elderly man as I struggled within his grip and asked, "Why are you stopping me? I want to leave. I don't want to stay here." Uncle James was stronger than me. Despite my years of physical labor, I didn't know how he got so strong, but I was undoubtedly breaking down. Uncle James was just placating me, saying, "It's getting windy outside. Young man, why don't you go back and put on an extra layer? At least put on your shoes." I don't recall how long we stood there, but eventually, I nodded and entered the grand door, my heart chilled by the autumn breeze. Frank had never come back by then. I was living there alone. Except for not having a mobile phone, everything seemed fine. I was dining on delicacies from the mountains and seas, living in splendor, where even a small plate seemed to cost half a month's salary. I must admit, it was as if I had fallen from a slum straight into a lavish dream where everything was within easy reach. But that's the way it is with dreams. They all come to an end. After seeing me that day, Uncle James relaxed his supervision, spending his days eating, sleeping, reading in the study, and occasionally taking walks around the house. So, when I figured out the aunt's schedule for going out to buy groceries, I snuck past Uncle James and hid in the trunk of the commuter car, hoping to see the sky beyond the white courtyard walls once the vehicle stopped. However, when the car turned off and I eagerly pried open the trunk, I was met by Frank's deep, dark eyes. That night, after being caught and brought back, I saw the shimmering lights again. Frank bit my neck and asked, "Will you run again?" My jaws clenched, hands firmly gripping the chains that bound me. I refused to let out a sob. Frank, not getting the answer he wanted, grew furious. The next day, my movements were restricted. My mother once praised my ability to advance and retreat while playing chess with me, noting it was a good trait that could help me in the future if used wisely. Initially, I dismissed it, but later realized its truth. At that time, I relied on this so-called trait to attempt many escapes, but my mother didn't tell me that not everything leads to a good outcome, not every opportunity can propel one to great heights. All my attempts to escape had failed. During my last attempt, Frank rushed back from the company, sending people to search around the villa while calling Uncle James to check every room. Eventually, as if sensing something, he looked up and saw me curled up on the roof. His usually expressionless face broke into a laugh. Unusually, he gave me a choice, asking, "Do you want to come down yourself, or should I come up and get you?" I stared at him for a long time, knowing that this attempt to escape had also ended in failure. What little hope I had faded into a subtle resignation. I had lost my appetite for 3 months. I asked him, "Why me?" Frank remained silent for a while before saying, "The first time I saw you, I thought you were beautiful. The next day, I just wanted to take you home." I asked, "Are you saying you like me?" Frank didn't directly admit it, merely saying, "If you call that feeling liking, then maybe, yes." It was absurd. I covered my mouth tightly, fearing I might vomit the next moment. Frank said, "I want to treat you well. Staying here would be much better than being a cleaner outside. Why do you always think about running away? Did you investigate me?" I wasn't surprised. Really, having money must be nice, being able to obtain anything you desire. Frank nodded. When Uncle James was leaving, he heard Frank chatting with me, looking up as well. The old man was quite startled and tried to keep his voice down as he admonished me, "Why are you dressed so lightly? Spring hasn't even arrived yet. What if you catch a cold? Come down, will you? I'll make you some sweet soup to warm you up." Only then did I realize that when I first arrived here, it was still the tail end of a long summer, and now winter was almost over. I finally asked Frank, "You clearly investigated me. You must know I just want to be an ordinary person and live a normal life. Even so, you still won't let me go, will you?" Frank didn't answer, but his silence spoke volumes. The bodyguards had already started setting up a long ladder. Hearing the noise behind me, I suddenly remembered my mother saying, "Your name is the sound of an eagle flying." Then, I leapt from the 3-story rooftop. After I was discharged from the hospital, Frank kept an even closer eye on me. His company's hectic period seemed to have ended. He no longer went out and stayed at the villa to take care of me personally, absorbing all my emotions. I became lazy in the nightly shimmering lights of the swimming fish, hardly speaking, just quietly existing, which suited Frank even more. Uncle James, however, seemed worried, often silently observing the remnants of food I had eaten and then thrown up in the trash can. At that time, Frank patted my back while answering a friend's call, saying, "We haven't fought for a long time. He doesn't resist my touch now, and he's very well behaved. I feel sorry for his injuries. But if these injuries make him understand the consequences of escaping from me, it's a blessing in disguise." He knew I was a light sleeper during naps. Perhaps he said these things deliberately for me to hear. Frank was still angry about my suicidal actions. Just 2 days later, during Frank's brief outing, an uninvited guest arrived at the villa. It was a dignified and graceful woman. Uncle James treated her with great respect but refused to yield, insisting she remain standing in the yard. I was on the second-floor balcony, passing the time by reading Frank's complex business books. When I heard this woman claim to be Frank's mother, I immediately stood up from the lounge chair. Everything went black for a moment, but as I regained my composure, I held my breath, ran downstairs, and called out to Uncle James, "Let her in." Uncle James was taken aback but chose to listen to me after a brief pause. Frank's mother's piercing eyes scanned me from head to toe, a smirk of disdain on her lips as she assessed, "Smart one." I followed her inside and sat on the sofa opposite her. After Uncle James brought the tea and I asked him to collect the books I had left upstairs and clean up the spilled tea, he left. Once he was gone, Frank's mother spoke, "Young man, my son has kept you well hidden. Do you know how much effort it took me to find this place?" I asked her. "Are you here to send me away?" The question was urgent, carried by an excitement I hadn't noticed myself. Frank's mother chuckled and said, "Why would I want to send you away?" I was taken aback. This was not what I had expected. "Did you really think this was some brainless novel?" Frank's mother elegantly sipped her tea. Every move she made seemed to mock me as an ignorant fool. I thought he was hiding a woman, which could have been troublesome. So I came to warn him not to father any illegitimate children, she said. Turns out you're a man, which makes things even simpler. I stared at her face in shock, opening and closing my mouth, but unable to utter a word. Seeing me like this, Frank's mother mercifully told me, as long as he marries honestly in the future, what do I care how many lovers he has? She placed the teaspoon on the saucer, making a clear sound. It was as if I snapped back to reality. I painfully closed my eyes and asked, I'm here against my will, can you take me away? I promise not to take any money or anything else, and I'll never show up in front of you again. Frank's mother's unsettling gaze swept over me again as she asked, how can you prove you're here against your will? In haste, I replied, I was forcibly taken by Frank from Boom Hotel Room 7606. There should be surveillance footage. I remember the exact time, Frank's mother countered. Have you seen the surveillance yourself? How do you know it definitely captured anything? I was left speechless. Frank's mother seemed satisfied, pulling a smile. No evidence. Then, that's good. I was worried, but now I'm relieved. My son won't be tainted by this. As for you, why should I cause a rift with my son over you? After finishing her tea, she left, but her words left a deep, painful hole in my heart with every word feeling like a stab. I was too naive. When Frank returned, he didn't find me where I usually was. Uncle James was busy preparing dinner in the kitchen. After searching everywhere, he pushed open the indoor pool door and found me drowning in the pool. That was the closest I ever came to death. The gentle, invisible water, when embracing a person, first swallows their bitter tears. Outside the emergency room, Uncle James informed Frank about my recent anorexia and insomnia. After consulting with doctors, they decided to find a psychologist for me. When I woke up, I initially found it absurd. They wanted me to breathe, yet refused to loosen the grip around my neck. Then, I became anxious and fearful. What exactly did Frank want to do? Was he trying to label me with a mental illness to make it easier to shackle me? I refused to cooperate, and the psychologist was helpless. He visited 3 times, and each session was a monologue on his part. So, at the end of the 3rd visit, he gently asked Frank, if you really want him to get better, there are other methods we could try. Would you like to give them a go? Frank's face darkened as he asked. What methods? The psychologist suggested. Hypnosis. I can use medication to assist in hypnotizing him, making him temporarily unable to clearly recall painful memories. Otherwise, his current state is quite dangerous. Don't worry, if there's any obstruction, I'll stop immediately to avoid impacting his original memories. For the first time, Frank hesitated. He remembered Sam in the hospital room, just having faced death, opening his eyes to see him, that hopeless look. He had Uncle James see the visitor out, stood outside the door for a long time, raised his hand to knock but put it down again, and finally just told me, rest well. The psychologist's words soon proved true again. Over those years, time and again, I ran towards death until finally, Frank had no choice but to lock me in a room and remove all sharp objects. He pinned me down on the bed, choking me, demanding, haven't I treated you well? Do you really need to leave even if it means getting hurt? I hysterically responded, yes, I want to leave. If I could, I'd never want to see you again in my life. Looking into my bloodshot eyes, he was the first to back down, leaving with the words, impossible, before fleeing, leaving me to mock his retreating figure. It had been a long time since I had laughed. I laughed because Frank truly cared. And hesitation marks the beginning of one's downfall. As I laughed, a bitter taste suddenly filled my mouth. It's strange, isn't it? Even when one laughs in pain, tears can still fall. After that, I seemed to resign myself to my fate. At dawn, I watched the birds fly past the window, waiting for Uncle James to bring me my meals. Frank seemed to have gotten busy again. It had been a long time since he last appeared. Though he suddenly began sending back odd gifts, he noted in his messages. To make up for your childhood, the toys I never let my mother buy to save money were now truly before me, yet my mood was hardly uplifted. Having information truly gives one a sense of security. Looking at the pile of outdated Rubik's Cubes and mech models, I really did fiddle with them occasionally, even asking, when is Frank coming back? Uncle James just smiled gently, comforting me, he'll be back in a couple of days. Eat a little more. The tricks Frank learned from his friends indeed worked. Thinking this, Uncle James decided to call Frank later. urging him to take some time to come back and keep me company. However, I put down my spoon and, dragging the chain on my foot, sat in the rocking chair and closed my eyes. I didn't want to talk anymore. Uncle James helplessly looked at the barely touched food and took it away. Frank returned that very evening. It was late autumn, and he entered the room with the cool autumn breeze. Embracing me from behind, he asked, "Baby, did you miss me?" I countered, "Did you miss me?" Frank buried his head in my neck and shoulder and mumbled a response. The villa was in the suburbs, far from the company, and commuting back and forth took a lot of time. Despite his busy schedule, he still chose to come back to see me. The day was very clear, and the night sky was full of stars. He went through documents on the bed, unbothered by my presence. I read every word and realized belatedly that it was a tender document. Shifting my gaze, I casually asked, "Have you been very busy lately? When will you be done?" He thought for a moment and told me, "By early next month, not many days left. I'll spend some quality time at home with you after that." I was silent for a moment before saying, "Give me a mobile phone, Frank. I want to play games. You can remove the SIM card." Frank was momentarily stunned, then his smile faded. He studied me carefully for a long time before saying, "Tomorrow I'll have Uncle James bring it to you. Take care of your eyes, and don't play for too long." I nodded, adding, "You can check, or even install monitoring if you're worried." Strategic retreat often proves effective. Frank just held me without saying a word. On the day of the bid, he was brimming with confidence, eagerly anticipating a victory so he could return home to me. Instead, he was shockingly informed that he had lost the bid. As if struck by a blow, as he managed a smile at me, passing by, I recited key figures from the Fong Corporation's bid proposal without missing a beat. Before Frank could even respond, his rival had left abruptly. The company highly valued this project, having prepared for it extensively for over half a year. Now, with the key data leaked, internal chaos ensued. At that moment, Frank received a call from Uncle James. During dinner, I deliberately broke a bowl and hid the sharpest shard. Before Uncle James realized what I was doing and inspected the pieces, I had already slashed my wrists. It took 2 days before I regained consciousness. Groggy, Frank stood by my hospital bed, unshaven, his normally immaculate suit wrinkled and disheveled. He carefully fed me water, his movements practiced. Finally, he sat down to discuss the issue we had avoided for 400 days. Frank's voice was filled with helpless frustration. He dared not shout, only sighed as he asked, "Is staying by my side really that painful for you?" My gaze fell on his face, expressionless as a still pond. I didn't answer his question. Instead, I asked, "How does it feel to lose the bid?" He looked up, unwilling to listen further. I didn't give him the chance to evade again and confessed, "I was the one who leaked your bid to your competitor." Frank, puzzled, asked, "How did you do that?" I said, "I've read the news and knew the corporate email of your competitor. You investigated me, overly confident that I, an uneducated fool, wouldn't understand these business matters and didn't even install monitoring software on my phone." He asked, "Why would they believe you?" I replied, "Exactly. So, I portrayed myself as a forced canary, adding details of your whereabouts as proof. They didn't need to fully believe me. A little doubt was enough. Once they confirmed that Frank indeed had a well-hidden lover, they would contemplate the reliability of the data." Frank suddenly smiled. He reached out to touch my face. I almost thought he was so angry he might strangle me, but instead, he simply caressed my cheek and said, "Sam, I'm letting you go." I stared at his moving lips, my mind going blank. "Say that again. Say it again." He repeated, "As you wish, Sam, you are free." Watching him leave the hospital room, tears rolled down from the corner of my eyes. It was only when laughter echoed in my ears that I realized it was me laughing. Frank never lied to me. After I repeatedly refused to stay in the hospital for observation, on a gloomy day, he draped his coat over me and watched as I left the hospital. Uncle James, concerned for my well-being, packed my bag with plenty of clothes and food. Carrying a large backpack and dragging a suitcase, with my heart shattered, I walked away with difficulty. Frank, standing behind me with a cool tone, said, "Sam, if you fail to take care of yourself after leaving me, I will definitely bring you back. Wait and see." I could hear him grinding his teeth, likely despising my betrayal and my escape. At that moment, I actually looked back at him once, sitting in the taxi heading to the train station. I looked through the window and saw his eyes, brimming with emotion. Was he in pain? What was he pained about? What right did he have to feel pain? 3 years later, I saw that same damp gaze again in the hospital. Actually, the day I left Frank was the first time I ever went to the train station. My mind was blank. I didn't know where to escape to, just that I couldn't stay in City A any longer. So, I followed the passenger ahead of me and bought a ticket to the same destination. 2 days and nights later, I discarded Frank's overcoat and arrived in City H, where I settled down. The taxi dropped me off at my complex. I paid the fare, hurried inside my home, and locked the door firmly behind me. I silently hoped that Frank wouldn't find me too quickly in this unfamiliar city. After waiting for half an hour without any sign of trouble, I breathed a sigh of relief, dragged my weary body, and changed out of my dirty clothes. Rolling up my sleeves, the bruises on my elbow became visible. The gray lining hid the bloodstains, but the scraped area was quite large and had already scabbed over. I've never been too clever, always prone to accidents. That's why I always kept some antiseptic and gauze at home. It was only recently that I learned the truth from the doctor. It wasn't that I was clumsy, I was ill. I dug out some saline solution and iodine from the cupboard, but treating myself was challenging. Both of my arms were stiff from the injuries, and treating one would cause the other to hurt terribly. Just then, there was a knocking at the door. The person outside didn't say a word, just persistently banged on my door, helplessly. I put down the cotton swab, picked up a wrench from the corner of the living room, and tiptoed to the door. When I rented the place, I specifically requested a security door with a peephole, which now proved useful. Standing outside was a familiar figure, Frank's mother. She was accompanied by 2 bodyguards, her usual elegance replaced by a somewhat terrifying expression. During the gaps between her knocks, I tapped lightly from the inside in response. Frank's mother paused for a moment, then said through clenched teeth, "I thought you were trouble-free, but it turns out you're a disaster. It was bad enough that you seduced my son, but you also messed up the company and then just took off." Her voice was sharp, painfully piercing my eardrums. Hearing no response from me, Frank's mother continued to berate me. "You wretch, scoundrel, why on earth would you do this?" Suddenly, I spoke up. "When I asked you to take me away, you just mocked me. Why did you do that?" The woman's anger intensified, her face contorted as she said, playing the victim after gaining an advantage, "I understand your type very well, always crying for freedom, but easily dismissed with some money. Should I really upset my own son over someone who's half-truthful?" I replied, "But I never asked you for money, I just wanted to leave that place. What's the difference?" Frank's mother kicked the door with her little high heel, numbing my palms with the vibration. "What if you were just playing games with Frank? Should I become part of your play?" I remained silent, knowing I couldn't reason with her, and dismissively said, "Please leave. Since I've left, it's best we go our separate ways. You will never be able to appear before me again." Unexpectedly, Frank's mother demanded, "It's too late. I want you to get out of here." I asked, "Why? How dare you ask? I found out it was you who betrayed the company's secrets. Taking the fall for your actions was supposed to be my son. I had to pull strings to smooth things over. Did you think you could just walk away without paying a price?" Her face was filled with hatred, as if she could break down my door any moment and tear me to pieces. I just gave a bitter smile. "That's a pity. It's a pity I couldn't get my revenge. Frank bullied me, and he faced no consequences, and all I did was bite back. Yet I have to pay the price." After a long silence, Frank's mother kicked again. "Playing dead, are you?" My hand trembled and the wrench I was holding dropped to the ground with a loud thud. An inexplicable rage surged up from the depths of my heart. I clenched my fist so hard it almost pierced my palm, and that was my response. "This is what Frank owes me. Remember what you used to say about me, Auntie? Didn't you say I was smart?" I was locked up by Frank for 3 years. I've been in his study thousands of times. Guess how many secrets I know. Before I step out of this door today, I'll send all this information straight to your rival's inbox. You're right, people like me, especially those without any family, are the easiest to dismiss, but would you dare try? The barefoot are not afraid of the shoe wearing. I'm ready to risk my life and go to jail. Are you?" Outside, there was a silence as deep as death. I caught my breath and peered through the peephole into the old stairwell once again. This time, there were several more people in the tiny field of view provided by the lens. Frank was there, standing next to his mother, while several bodyguards firmly covered her mouth. Frank's mother, hearing my words, struggled continuously, trying to signal to me inside with her eyes. After a moment, Frank spoke, "Take the lady back." The bodyguards nodded and immediately lifted the woman, carrying her lightly down the stairs. Frank and I locked eyes through the peephole. My mind went blank, almost forgetting to breathe. Frank spoke softly, "Sam, I told you, if you didn't take care of yourself after leaving me, I'd bring you back. Will you open the door yourself, or shall I? Believe me, you don't want to see what comes next." "Sam," I shivered reflexively, my ability to speak seemingly lost at that moment, unable to utter a word. The weather today was not good, and in the dim hallway, half of Frank's face was hidden in the shadows, instilling fear. His hands hung by his sides, fingers lightly tapping on a lighter through his trousers. Tap tap tap, more patient than he was years ago. I closed my eyes, my heart pounding wildly within my chest. Then slowly lifted my trembling hand to unlock the safety latch and opened the door. Frank cracked a smile, almost like a compliment. "Good boy." He stepped into the entrance, forcing me to retreat step by step until I knocked over the iodine placed carelessly aside. Frank glanced at it, then looked me up and down, furrowing his brow. "What happened? Did you fall?" I pulled down my sleeve to cover up, replying, "It's nothing," he said softly. "You've lost weight, indeed." These years hadn't been kind to me, that much was true. Clothes that once fit now hung loose, only filling out when the wind blew. Frank didn't dwell on my ignoring him. He reached out his hand, which I dodged. Without showing much emotion, he asked, "You don't need to mind what my mom said. The car's downstairs. Do you want to walk down by yourself, or should I carry you?" I finally looked up into his eyes and said, "I'm not going with you." Frank's expression darkened. "There's no such option." I gave a faint smile as the breeze through the hall lifted my dull hair, along with the hem of my clothes. "Did you ever give me a choice, Frank?" "You never offered choices. I always had them. It was you who took them away." Frank did not directly respond but said, "Staying here, living in a rental, you can't even take care of yourself properly. It will only increase your suffering," I countered. "How do you know that going back with you would be better than now?" Frank's cold eyes fixed on me, and I never shied away from meeting his gaze. After a moment, he was the first to look away. He stepped forward and suddenly grabbed the back of my head, planting a kiss on me. The kiss was brief, ending as soon as our lips met. The bodyguards nearby discreetly turned away, until the sound of a crisp slap rang out. They were startled but still dared not look back. I trembled as I pushed him away, wiping my lips fiercely with my sleeve, stepping back sharply. "So dirty, too dirty." Frank's face showed anger. With no intention of letting me go, he stepped forward, grabbing my wrist, pulling me outside despite my kicking him. Everything I could reach was too smooth, a precaution I had taken to avoid injuring myself, offering no leverage. "I'm not going, Frank, I won't go with you." The door that had been opening for 3 years suddenly seemed like the entrance of that old mansion. It seemed as if those unbearable days were beckoning to me again. Then suddenly, everything went dark. Frank dealt with my resistance, only to find me collapse limply. I dreamed of my mother. She looked as she did when I was in high school. She tucked me in, gently stroking my forehead, her voice so soft, saying, "My little eagle, you'll have to fly on your own one day. No matter what kind of person you become or the path you choose, your mother always hopes you'll be free, brave, and never submissive. I will always be proud of you." When I woke up, I heard Frank talking to the doctor. "It's growing too fast, invading the brain vessels. What about surgery? His physical condition is too weak. Even with surgery, the prognosis might not be good. We recommend palliative care." Frank was silent for a long time, unwilling to give up. He asked, "Isn't there any other way?" The doctor simply expressed regret. "I'm sorry." I heard footsteps fading away before I slowly opened my eyes to the bleak white ceiling of the hospital. Frank sat beside me, holding my hand that was hooked to an IV drip. His expression was far from calm, dark and gloomy, like a dim rain falling. He asked softly, "Are you feeling uncomfortable anywhere?" I leaned back on the hospital bed, looking up at him, slowly shaking my head, my voice hoarse. "Water." Frank got up to pour me hot water, cooled it down a bit, then helped me up and handed it to me. His movements were smooth. I took a few sips, holding the cup to savor the warmth. He had waited for who knows how long. His stubble turning blue, looking utterly exhausted, he said, "You've been asleep for 3 days. Has this happened before?" I nodded and calmly replied, "It started 2 months ago. I would often pass out without any apparent reason, and it's been happening more frequently lately. A few days ago was my first time going to the hospital. Then I saw Frank and ran back home. Frank didn't bring up taking me back again. I guessed maybe I had already been brought back. Or perhaps he would naturally take me with him when I was discharged. Sometimes, I really couldn't understand it. I wasn't particularly outstanding in appearance, at best passable. I also had a weird temper. I had few friends since childhood. And I never thought about having any deep relationships with anyone. Why did Frank choose me?" Thinking this, I also voiced the question. Frank traced my features with his gaze, a nostalgic expression on his face, and said, "I don't know either. From a young age, I lived in a mold, surrounded by people made from that same mold. One day, I saw someone different. His eyes didn't carry the ingrained cunning from childhood. They were bright and clear. He was talking about me, at that moment. I thought you were so special, so pure," I said. "That's not a reason for you to treat me this way." Frank's eyes dimmed. "My mother used me as a tool while claiming to love me. I used to think that doing good things for someone was love. I can't understand why you always think about running away." I held a paper cup, looking down at the fragmented shadows reflected in the water. "This is coercion. I never accepted your so-called love. It's too cruel for me." Frank looked intently at me. Such calm dialogue, such calmness in me, was very unusual between us. I asked him, "How did you know my address in H City?" It was more of a probing question. Frank started with an apology. "Sorry, I know." He clenched his knees. "I had people follow you to protect you." I wasn't too surprised. Rather, I felt a calm acceptance as if my suspicions were confirmed. "Is it because of your mother or something else?" He replied, "Both. I wanted to know if you were doing well, and I was afraid that my mother and the people from the company would trouble you, so he could extend a helping hand when I was in pain." I even smiled a little and said, "Actually, I've been doing quite well these past years, enjoying the hard-earned freedom. Although it's not exactly complete freedom, but you've lost weight, and there are still many injuries on your body," Frank said. I handed him the cup, which he took and placed on the bedside cabinet. "Have all my wounds been treated?" Both my arms were wrapped in antibacterial gauze, and there was a burning sensation on my knees. Frank just sighed. "There are too many wounds." I crossed my hands, covering the slight trembling, and said, "Do you know, Frank, when I first left you, I was very happy every day, but not long after those days, I began to feel empty, even hallucinatory. I always thought I was just having a dream. That when I woke up, I'd still be in that room, with chains on my feet. In reality, it's even more tragic. I don't have any qualifications, and I've even been single for 3 years. I can't find a job. I'm starving," I said, suddenly bursting into laughter. Once, when I was delivering food, a customer saw that I was young and gave me 2 bottles of milk, which I treasured so much that I didn't drink them right away. By the time I did, they had already expired. "Back then, I really hated you," I continued. "It felt like you had ruined my life." Frank's eyes reddened as he muttered, "I'm sorry, but after that, I surprisingly began to feel grateful to you, thankful for introducing me to high society, and for showing me there are other, happier ways to live." My voice started to choke up. "My old teacher used to say that you cannot step into the same river twice, but back then, I kept wondering how I could keep stepping into the same river. It was only later that I realized I wasn't stepping into a river but into a pool of bitterness. Someone on the shore was creating ripples, like a butterfly flapping its wings on the other side, continuously stirring the waves, trapping me struggling in the bitter water. Do I hate Frank? Yes, life was so hard that when he became the biggest obstacle in my sight, I felt like all my resentment and frustration with life were directed at him. Sadly, while I knew I was blaming him excessively, I couldn't control myself. When I first left that mansion, I forgot to eat and clean myself, forgetting that I no longer had everything handed to me. It was a shameful and sad withdrawal reaction. As I started to reshape my habits and began tasting the freedom I had longed for, I found life to be unbearably bitter. Why not go back to Frank? Why escape from the palm of his hand to face this cold, ruthless world? Why reject his love? Why couldn't I love him? This was the bitter fruit of a mix of stress response and Stockholm syndrome. Time and again, I told myself I was free. I needed to experience the storm freely, reminding myself that the essence of life is an adventure. Two conflicting thoughts waged a world war within me, leaving me as a war-torn land, scarred and bruised. Crying and laughing, I said, "Frank, look, I'm really not doing well. I'm seriously ill. I don't want to be thankful, but this is the only way I can keep living. I need to survive first to enjoy freedom." You probably know I often go to the train station. I just stand there, not even knowing what I'm waiting for, telling myself through this ridiculous method that I've finally escaped and can't go back. If you try to take me back, I would choose a glorious, splendid death. Only this way can I honor the unreachable freedom. Frank asked me, "Is freedom really that important to you?" I replied, "To put it pretentiously, some might drown in the beautiful illusions you offer, but there will always be those who are meant to be birds in the sky." He turned away, a tear falling from his eye and soaking into his suit. "When I first escaped, I gave your competitor the bidding documents. I'm uneducated. I've never been to college. I couldn't understand your documents. Fortunately, I have a clever mind that allows me to memorize critical information from your documents by rote. I hope to bite you back in this ridiculous manner." During that sleepless night, I recited the obscure specifications by the light of the bedside lamp, word by word. The cold wind made my feet ache, but my heart felt unusually warm. I asked him, "You've bitten me so many times. A little retaliation from me isn't too much, is it?" Frank forced an ugly smile and said, "It's not too much. I'm the one who owes you an apology." Looking into his earnest eyes, it seemed like all his energy was spent. I had waited too long for these words. At 20, it was unexpected. At 27, this year, I finally received a sincere apology from my aggressor. "You can go now." I closed my eyes and said, "I don't want to see you anymore. I just want to hate you." Don't let me fall into the bitterness of thanking my aggressor. The empty hospital room fell silent as Frank looked at Sam's furrowed brow from pain and murmured softly, "Just wait a little longer. Let me look at you a bit more. I really do like you." How could someone willingly scramble back to a life of hardship from a comfortable environment? Sam was truly special. From love at first sight to growing affection and sympathy. Frank left after Sam fell asleep. Before leaving, he arranged everything: specialists, caregivers, and bodyguards. Sam refused them all, taking a brief trip back to H City. He terminated the lease on his tiny 50-square-meter flat, packed up his belongings, and returned to a city. Before his mother passed, she left him a small house. He regretted not visiting more often, later too afraid to return. But now, no place gave Sam a greater sense of home. Sam had some savings, enough to live out his remaining days. Frank secretly followed Sam once during the move. Such a frail person carrying boxes taller than himself, swaying as he went upstairs. Instinctively wanting to help, Frank turned his head and saw Sam smiling, chatting with a former neighbor. "I used to work out of town, now I'm back." The neighbor patted his shoulder, taking half of the pile of things. "You've lost a lot of weight. I'm making ribs tonight. Come over for dinner." Sam replied, "Sure, it's been a long time since I had your cooking." They walked up the stairs together until they disappeared from view. Frank's hand, poised to open the car door, slid down instead and rolled down the window, lighting a cigarette. Ordinary days passed just like that. As he was about to leave the stairwell, he accidentally caught sight of the familiar black-clad bodyguards in the outpatient lobby. His hand shook, and the door slammed shut. Coincidentally, Mr. Frank, early this morning at 5, Mr. Sam woke up and came downstairs to knock on our car window. Sam fiercely scolded the bodyguards, apparently harboring long-standing resentment towards this so-called protective surveillance. Then, he made a call to his lawyer to arrange his affairs, his property to be left to a student he sponsored. Before going upstairs, the light that had been on in that room for 6 months was turned off. Sam had been afraid of the dark since those 4 years. Now, lying alone in the small bed he had grown up in, he watched the sky through the mosquito netting, the stars gradually fading. The dark sky slowly lit up with the brilliant colors of dawn, rewarding unparalleled bravery. The bodyguard added, "Mr. Sam hasn't been able to walk for a long time. The doctor said it was a rally before the end. He was lucid before he passed, with no pain." Frank remained silent on the other end of the phone for a long time. finally managing to say, "That's good." It turns out escaping Stockholm Syndrome is so simple yet so cruel. One needs all their last adrenaline to carve out a clear path. He said, "Knowing you hate me is good enough." Hate, consciously, a deep-seated hatred. Those who soften their hearts with small kindnesses to the abuser will find themselves eternally imprisoned in hell alongside them. Only hatred, only heroic sacrifice, only relentless courage, and only the pursuit of free will can lead one to heaven. The phone call was disconnected, the office door swung open, and a group of serious-faced individuals entered, among the crowd. Frank saw several familiar faces and Sam's lawyer. "Hello, we are from the A City Public Security Bureau. Here are our badges. According to the provisions of the Criminal Procedure Law, we are here to summon you by law." Half a year later, Frank was sentenced to 4 years of imprisonment for intentional injury, illegal detention, and infringement of trade secrets, with multiple charges combined. Coincidentally, Sam, too, had been imprisoned by him for 4 years. That's all about 2 stories. Do you have any insights after watching the above story? Feel free to tell us in the comment sections below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe my channel please. See you next time.